Imagine waking up to breaking news that one of America's closest trading partners, a country it has courted for years as a counterbalance to China, has just decided to ditch the US dollar. No gradual phase-out, no quiet shift behind closed doors. Instead, a direct, bold, and very public announcement: India will now settle a significant portion of its trade in Chinese yuan. This isn't just a change in how bills get paid. It's a direct challenge to the financial order America has relied on for decades. For Washington, it's a worrying sign of the times. And for Donald Trump, who has long positioned himself as the defender of US economic dominance, it's the kind of headline that sparks political nightmares. Before we break down exactly why this is happening, what it means for the future of the US economy, and why the BRICS alliance is at the center of it all, make sure you subscribe, tap like, and hit the bell icon so you're always ahead of the curve on stories the mainstream media is slow to cover. India's shocking currency shift. India's decision to ditch the dollar and switch to the yuan is sending shockwaves through global trade. For decades, the dollar has been the default currency not just in Asia but worldwide, the backbone of oil deals, commodity markets, and international loans. But now, India, the world's most populous country and one of the fastest-growing economies, is making a very public statement: the dollar is no longer the only game in town. This bold move comes at a time when global trust in the US financial system is already being tested by sanctions, rising debt, and political polarization. By aligning with yuan-based trade, India is signaling not just a change in payment preference, but a willingness to reshape its alliances and economic future. This move directly threatens the dollar's long-standing dominance in Asia. It's also a sign of a much bigger shift happening behind the scenes, a shift that could reshape the balance of economic power for decades to come. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has been steadily building momentum toward a common goal: breaking the dollar's monopoly over global trade, and India's latest step could be the tipping point. How BRICS became a threat to the dollar. When BRICS was first formed, it was seen as nothing more than a group of large emerging economies with similar growth potential. Western analysts often dismissed it as an acronym without much real-world impact. But the last decade changed everything. China became the world's largest exporter. India became a global technology and services hub. Russia doubled down on energy dominance. Brazil grew into a major agricultural superpower. And South Africa became a critical gateway to African markets. Then came the sanctions era. When Russia was cut off from much of the global banking system in 2022, it found ways to keep trading by using alternative currencies, especially the yuan. This proved something important: the dollar might be powerful, but it isn't untouchable. Now, BRICS nations are openly discussing a shared reserve currency, new payment systems, and ways to settle trade in their own currencies. With India now participating in yuan-based settlements, this vision is becoming much more real. Why India is making the switch. India's shift to the yuan isn't random, it's calculated. Three main reasons stand out. 1. Economic efficiency. Trading with China in dollars means converting rupees to dollars, and then dollars to yuan. Every step costs money in conversion fees and exposes the deal to fluctuations in the dollar's value. Directly using the yuan cuts out the middle step and reduces costs. 2. Strategic independence. India has a complex relationship with both Washington and Beijing. While it works with the US in defense and technology, it also has ongoing border disputes with China. By using the yuan for trade, India is signaling that it won't be locked into a dollar-only system that Washington controls, especially in a world where financial systems can be weaponized through sanctions. 3. BRICS alignment. BRICS wants to reduce dollar dependence. If India sticks to the dollar while the rest of BRICS moves toward alternative systems, it risks being left behind in its own alliance. The yuan settlement decision keeps India in step with the group's long-term plans. A blow to dollar dominance. The US dollar isn't just a currency, it's a tool of global power. It allows Washington to borrow money cheaply, control access to international finance, and punish countries with sanctions that actually work. But dollar dominance has been quietly eroding. In the late 1990s, more than 70% of global foreign exchange reserves were in dollars. Today, that figure is under 60% and slipping. India's move may not seem huge at first glance, but if even 20 to 30% of its trade shifts out of dollars, it could trigger a chain reaction in other countries. Once trust in the dollar's inevitability fades, alternatives start to look more attractive. For Donald Trump, this is a nightmare because his trade strategy has always relied on America's financial leverage. Tariffs, renegotiations, and sanctions all depend on the world needing US dollars. If that need weakens, so does America's bargaining power. The history of dollar power. To understand why Washington is so concerned, you have to know how the dollar became so dominant in the first place. After World War II, the US was the world's largest industrial power and controlled most of the world's gold. At the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference, world leaders agreed to peg their currencies to the dollar, and the dollar would be pegged to gold. This gave the dollar unmatched credibility and made it the backbone of global trade. Even after the US ended the gold standard in 1971, the dollar stayed dominant because oil-exporting nations agreed to sell oil only in dollars. This petrodollar system created constant demand for the currency and ensured America's financial leverage over global markets. For decades, no serious competitor emerged. The euro tried, but debt crises in Europe weakened it. The yuan was dismissed as too tightly controlled by Beijing's central planners. But today, those assumptions are changing fast as nations grow frustrated with US economic influence and begin exploring serious alternatives. China's strategic playbook. Beijing has been playing the long game. Instead of trying to replace the dollar overnight, it's been building trade agreements that make the yuan a natural choice for settlements. It started with Russia and energy deals, which provided a massive boost to the yuan's credibility as a trading currency. Then came agreements with countries in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, all carefully crafted to reduce dependency on the US financial system. Each time, the yuan's share of global trade crept upward, slowly eroding the dollar's dominance without triggering a full-scale confrontation. Now, with India joining in, China's strategy looks even more effective. This is not just a symbolic move. India is a major global economy with deep ties to Western markets. By making the yuan a practical and reliable option for trade, rather than forcing it as a political statement, Beijing is winning quiet victories in the currency war. The long-term impact could be a multipolar financial world where the dollar no longer holds absolute power. Washington's dilemma. The US has two main options in response. It can offer better trade terms, lower tariffs, and more access to US markets to countries that stick with the dollar. This would be the carrot approach, rewarding loyalty while encouraging nations to keep their reserves and trade in dollars. Or it can use the stick, applying diplomatic and economic pressure, possibly even sanctions, to discourage dollar abandonment. But punishing India could push it further toward China, which is exactly what Washington wants to avoid. Trump, if faced with this situation during his presidency, would likely choose a mix of both, threatening tariffs while offering deals. However, the geopolitical reality in 2025 is far more complex than it was a decade ago. With the BRICS alliance now stronger than ever, and global supply chains shifting away from US control, even Trump's aggressive negotiating style might not be enough to reverse the trend without risking serious diplomatic fallout. India's decision doesn't mean the dollar will collapse tomorrow. But it does mean that the world is moving toward a more multipolar currency system, one where the dollar is just one of several options. If this continues, America will have to adjust to a future where it can't rely on the dollar to give it automatic leverage in trade and diplomacy. For Trump, and any US leader, that's a massive change in the rules of the game. The question now isn't whether the dollar's dominance will decline. It's how fast. And with India's latest move, the clock is ticking faster than Washington expected. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the stories shaping our world. Share this video with friends who need to know what's really going on behind the headlines, because the more people understand, the better prepared we all are for what's coming next.